Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm diving into the work of one of my favorite Japanese artists, Kawase Hasui. He was a master of the Shin-hanga movement, known for his breathtaking woodblock prints that capture the beauty of Japanese landscapes, villages, and cityscapes with incredible light, shadow, and seasonal atmosphere. Before I get started, I want to be clear, this is not my original artwork. I'm attempting to recreate one of Hasui's pieces as a study, not as an original work. I find that when I carefully analyze and replicate a masterpiece, I absorb so much about the artist's technique, composition, stylistic choices. It's a bit like learning directly from the artist, picking up on elements that I can later use to influence my own original work. So this is the piece I'll be working on today, and I just love how Hasui has captured the sort of mood through the color and the subtle gradients and the lighting. I really want to challenge myself to understand how he layers and blends tones to create that signature depth and serenity. All right, well, let's get into it. Let's see what I can learn from one of Japan's greatest artists. So I'm just going to start out with making a rough sketch, and this is just going to help me establish my main objects in the picture and the general composition. And I'm going to use this as a guide later to create a more refined sketch. The reason I like to do this at the beginning is because I often make a lot of mistakes at the beginning and I sometimes don't know where to go. So you can see here I've pushed back the opacity on that first sketch, and now I'm just going in and doing a more refined sketch with a lot of the details. And my plan is that I'm actually going to use this sketch here to fit onto the finished piece. So what I'm working on here will actually end up showing up in a lot of places. So I'm really taking my time. I am trying to get the details just right, and I'm adjusting where necessary. I try to tackle like the more difficult parts. So for me, that was in this case the Buddha statue here, which is the most detailed part. But then I move on to like some of the figures as well, because I know when I get those correct, then the things like the tree and the background and the mountains and stuff, that can just fall into place quite easily, rather than me spending all my time on those things first and then messing up at the end with the more difficult parts. I don't waste my time. So now you can see I'm working into the trees, which are quite enjoyable because in a way there's no mistakes. You know, a tree can have a lot of different gnarled branches and different directions of things. So if things don't line up perfectly, that's fine. I'm a little more free and flowing with this part of it. Sometimes I like to hide the sketch below just to get a clear idea of where things are going. And as I'm working on this here, I'm just adjusting small details and really trying to refine things. I do jump back and forth between certain things so I don't get tired of one element, and then I can see the piece coming together holistically a little bit easier. So I'm getting quite close to being done here. It's taking a lot of time, but I know that if I spend the time on this part of it and get it right, then the rest of the coloring and stuff will really be a lot easier, instead of trying to fight it. So now here I've pushed back the sketch a little bit and I'm filling in block colors, and I'm using a watercolor brush set in Procreate, which I downloaded, and I quite like the texture and the sort of realism of watercolor texture that it can give. So I'm really also testing out different brushes as I block in the colors just to, get a feeling for it. See how do the textures work and how do they feel in my hands. Now I did work on the sky for a while and I struggled many times to get it right. So you'll see here how many times I tried to get the clouds just right, and I'm using some sketches and guides to get it. And I was happy about the color, but something about it was just kind of bugging me a little bit. The texture wasn't quite right, so I did just hide everything and isolate and restart. I colored it a solid blue, and then I sort of erased parts of it with a watercolor brush, which kind of gave me the right texture. So now that everything's blocked in with its base color, I'm gonna come in with a shadow color, which is gonna make everything pop out a lot. And I spend a lot of time on the Buddha, since that's making up like almost 2/3 of the space in the drawing composition. So I started with that just to get it right. And I'm only using one dark color and going over my lines again just to get them darker. And this dark color is set to a multiply mode on the brush settings so that I can see the color layer below, and that it darkens whatever color I put it on. So I'm actually going to use this same color, which is like a opaque or sort of like actually a transparent dark blue, which kind of comes out on a green when it goes onto the Buddha. And I'm just applying this over most of the different areas actually. So just refining that detail a little bit and trying to adjust to kind of match Kawase Hasui's work as closely as I can, especially with regards to the tones and the overall kind of feeling. The contrast as well is very important, not to overdo it in areas where it doesn't match. So really taking my time here, and I'm feeling better and better about it. I must admit, like at some points, it's tiring to kind of be pushing up against some of the difficult parts here. So I do take breaks and try to come back to it at other points. But you guys get to see it all in one go, which is more interesting. So I'm getting really close now. I've switched on over to some of the background elements, and on the little house or shop shed, I do use like a darker brown. I come in and re-edit some of the texture and the saturation on the sky. A new layer where I do like a shadow, and I mark it as bright blue, as you saw there, just to kind of get a sense of it, because I'm gonna actually erase a lot of the sections of this splotch to get like a cast shadow from a tree. Here you can see, I'm like really going around the edges and just trying to get that feeling of the light coming through the tree that you cannot see in the composition, but it is casting a shadow. And this brings like some drama to the painting, which I really like. And it's what makes this work such a masterpiece. It's just that feeling of the light being captured and the creating of that serenity. So I do add some like shadow washes, like similar to how you might do in watercolor, where you might wash a very, very faint tint of color over areas. Then I'm also working on just getting all of the shadows kind of consistent. When it comes to the background, I'm just doing a base layer and then a shadow layer. I'm not really focusing on a highlight per se. I'm letting the color, the base color, be the highlight. So there's really not a lot of white. There's not a lot of bright points. It's very subdued, and this gives it this general feeling, which I really like. And I'm going to try to employ this more in my artwork in the future, because using highlights can be easy to overdo, and rather in this case the clouds are sort of the brightest points, and we're letting the clouds kind of create this windy feeling, which I absolutely love. We are getting now to the smaller background details. They do make a difference, so it's worth it, but they go pretty fast actually. So just having fun with those and not really working too seriously on recreating exactly what I see in the original, but getting the general feeling and the general shapes. A little bit of shadow here. I think that really helps make it pop. So a little bit of line work, a little bit of shadow, push it back, bring it forward. It all really helps. And then I'm just cleaning up the final details here, and that's pretty much it. So thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some things. I certainly did. I felt like when I started, I had to really kind of figure out where I was going with it, even though I felt like I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like. I didn't really know the process and the techniques, and I really learned a lot about like the basic blocking color theory here, where just putting a single block and then adding a shadow to it and not focusing too much on the highlight. This is a classic watercolor technique, which I have tried before, but now I'm getting a little bit clearer on how to use it a little bit more effectively over the whole painting. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed watching this get made, and go check out the other works by Hasui, and maybe try your hand at recreating a masterpiece yourself. I can only recommend it. It's a great way to get better, and yeah, I'm sure you'll do great. So that's all for now, and see you on the next video. Bye.